if you're really curious about the real, I would call the ultimate secret to my success, it has a lot to do with my personality type. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. Let's just go ahead and weigh in. I know that I should be losing weight at this point. We've got our pictures done, we got our scale, and we got our waist measurement. And so they're all a little bit down from last week, which is fantastic. And unfortunately, I didn't get the calories I was hoping to get, so I was a little bit under. But that's okay, because in the end, like I said, this is about consistency over time. And that small drop, to me, a lot of people would see motivation, but I actually did less this week. So you might be thinking, hey, how did that happen? Well, something I learned many years ago, and it's probably the most important part of this process, is that as I collected data, I noticed that just because I worked hard one week didn't mean that reflected right away. It actually took maybe the next week, or sometimes even 2 weeks, to actually see the difference. So that's why I don't like to make changes, until it's been, say, 2 weeks. First and foremost, is your journey going good right now? Where are you at? Are you making progress? What's working best? What's not working at all? Are you still asking yourself those questions? Because they're really gonna help you move forward, find things that work specifically for you. Because I'm sharing the things that work for me, and the, say, mental strategies, the spiritual strategies, the physiological strategies, but you're gonna be different. Everyone's different. That's the whole point of all of this, because you may be able to take some of the things, but they're not all gonna be effective. But some may help you. When you're trying to change, personality is something that you kind of have to consider. What is your personality like? And for me, I've always been kind of a number cruncher. I've liked numbers. I like to analyze data. I like seeing statistics. And so that kind of brings up today's advantage. I'm not saying that you need to do it, but it's what works for me. And it's something that I have to bring back in, because it's how I can be so, precise in this. I've never seen anybody else do it this way. This is something unique for me. And therefore I learned at some point that, hey, all the calorie tracking, taking all these numbers, I started seeing the bigger picture of myself in a metric form and a number form. And it really got me motivated to start trying to experiment, start trying different things. Because now I had two things I've never had before, and that was reliability and validity. When you're kind of doing experiments, those two are really important. This isn't a psychology class. If you want to learn more about that, you can go read about it. So what I found out years ago, after kind of playing around with, some of the different metrics, is that, there was a lot of data out there that was going to be helpful for my advantage. And that's actually what I started doing over time, is tracking different, data points. All of these are tools to help me be successful, and to help me get progress, and to help me see what's effective and what isn't. For today's advantage, it's a big one, and it's something that you don't necessarily have to do. As a matter of fact, it's only gonna attribute to a very small audience, and that's those ones I like to call the Dorcas Malurcuses.
A Dorcas Malurcus.
Nerds, the dweebs, the dorks, people who love data, people who like to analyze and crunch numbers, those who like to really get in and do analysis by paralysis. So I encourage you to kind of watch through if you can handle the data behind this and the statistics and the details. But if it's not your thing, I'm not offended in the least bit. So you can go ahead and skip to the end and just catch the summary. Now, those of you who are all about details, you might be asking yourself one question. What is this right here? This is a calculator. Have you seen one of these? It's been forever since I've seen this. So this is my daughter's. I use my phone calculator. I mean, I don't know who actually uses just handheld calculators anymore. If you're really into, metrics and numbers and formulas and all this different, madness of logic, pay attention to this one and see, you might find some things that are incorrect, and that's okay. It works for me, and it doesn't matter if it's incorrect, because if I'm getting the results, that's what's most important. And so maybe you'll derive something out of what I show to help you in your progress, your success, your tools, your advantages. That's really the whole point of this, is to show you things that I do and something that helps me be successful in order to help others find ways to be successful, and things that you don't often see out there and that are talked about.
You'll make this rather snappy, won't you? I have some very heavy thinking to do before 10 o'clock.
Hello, Peter. What's happening? We have sort of a problem here. Yeah, you apparently didn't put one of the new cover sheets on your TPS report.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry about that. I forgot.
Yeah. You see, we're putting the cover sheets on all TPS reports now before they go out. If you could just go ahead and make sure you do that from now on, that would be great. And I'll go ahead and make sure you get another copy of that memo.
So where did all this madness get started? Well, it actually began with a 1-year goal to track all my food, to just do it every day and be consistent with it. I actually ended up going well over 3 years, but in that process is where I kind of involved and incorporated tools in some of the different data points. Now I started using my Fitness Pal, and it was something that I was just comfortable with. I had used it years before, but for this go around, I definitely want to make sure that I was doing the best I can. So I used the scan feature and other different things, but what I wanted really was the calories and the macros. In the beginning of this, I thought the macros had a lot more merit, and then I learned over time that really it didn't see a difference in terms of my weight or fat loss with macros. It was really more related to the calories. Now, as I started logging these different data points of days, say my calories and my macros, I actually just kind of hand jammed them at first, and it turns out that my Fitness Pal actually has a export feature for all of those figures, but it really doesn't fit my mold in the spreadsheet. So I still hand jam them, and that's something that I'm comfortable doing. It really doesn't take that long. I like to do it just once per week, kind of put everything in there and just kind of see where I'm at. And I'm a big fan of the rule garbage in, garbage out. So if I'm putting in data that is not that accurate, then that's not good. But I know in the food world, you can't be accurate to every single calorie. So what's more important is that you just do the best you can. And then over time, I call it the law of averages. You know, there's some days are high, some days are low, and those will kind of balance out in the long run. And that's what I've really counted on. And I noticed that over months and months and months of doing it. And on that note, it's the same with calories out. We don't really know how many calories we burn in a day. These trackers are really to help us see that we're moving, and they'll give some figures, and I track that, and I kind of estimate it. I kind of round it a little bit. Some days are high, some days are low. It's all going to balance out in the long run. Calories out really just help me kind of see an about or an approximate of how many calories I really need to eat each day in order to stay fueled. But what I really like about it is that it shows you when you're not moving or not being active, and then you can catch that. So that's something that, you know, I like to do in this spreadsheet, is kind of see, okay, I was low this week overall, and now I need to push it up next week or change my food. Now, another great tool in this is the in-body measurement, and I try to do them once per month just to kind of see the direction I was going. And if you do these every 2 weeks, you need to be cautious, because sometimes our diets shift a little bit and the results may look very different, or you may think you're going in the wrong direction, but really you're not. It just depends on, you know, your intake of water. There's a lot of different, say, data that goes into this, and it's just a tool. So don't get too caught up into what it's showing, because you still have the pictures to see actual difference in physique change. I like all the other measurements it has in there, especially when it comes to building muscle. It can help you show that you're going in the right direction and that you're not blowing through muscle, because that was something really important. As I cut calories low and as I lost weight, I was losing muscle, and I didn't really know why, but this tool kind of helped me figure that out. And so what I did at some point is just make a spreadsheet of all the different, say, values it was putting out, so I could see the big picture and kind of see which way I was going. And this really helped me determine if I was losing muscle, losing fat, keeping the same composition. And not too long ago, the app actually had an update where you can see a lot more data now. So I don't really need this sheet anymore, because you can go through a lot more figures and kind of look at different things like hydration a little bit better. But overall, I used all 3 of these apps to really help me generate that bigger picture view, and used all of the figures that came from it to see if my diet was taking me in the right direction, or if there was something I was doing wrong in the process, like losing muscle. And this is how I found out, you know, an ideal macro range for me, calorie range, because I tracked it over time, and I used all these little different data points to see that change and to check if it was being effective or what I was missing. I actually found a number of things at some point that I thought were working, and, you know, without this data, I would have kept going in the wrong direction, because I would say losing muscle even with high carbs and high calories, but it's because my fat was too low. And so I kind of noticed some different things, and especially as the in-body reading was still going down. I used this sheet for a while, but I don't need this anymore, because I really know what I need for the most part, and it helps me, you know, determine based on my goals of how I want to set up my nutrition and my exercise and, you know, everything else. So what does it take to make something like this? I know it looks kind of complicated, but really it's not. You just have to add a few values. Number one is going to be the calories, and then the macros. I also add my calories out and my steps, and I do all that on the left side. So every day I add those figures in, and then the right column, this is all about totals, weekly totals specifically, so I can kind of see the overall picture. And each of those values are just an average from the other side, which is calculated in a basic formula. What I'm going to do now is go ahead and show you kind of how everything's set up, how I enter it all in, how it's kind of works. Pretty much that right side is just the averages, and on the left side is the daily values we're going to add in. And we're going to do that right now, is add in this year's total. So I'm pretty much going to go day to day. I'm going to add in the macros, add in the calories in, calories out, and the average values in the middle, those are just going to pre-calculate based on a simple formula. And the ones that say average mean I'm just adding all the totals for the 7 days and dividing by 7. And then the total values for weekly in and weekly out give me my caloric difference for the week, which helps me determine if I'm losing fat or not. Now, all the stuff on the right side of that is really just my notes or things I need to see or know, like what kind of exercises I was doing and things like recovery and my weight and sleep. And those are going to be really important in, say, the big picture, or if I'm having an issue or I can see something's not working, I can go to those notes and see, hey, maybe I was training too much or not enough, or I wasn't recovering. So this is more of just a journaling, and I highly recommend doing this because it really helps you look back and see different trends and patterns, and especially because we don't really remember our workouts or certain points in time, especially the longer it gets. And now that I have this advantage back, I get to go into this spreadsheet, enter all my values so far for the year, and really see how I'm doing so far because I haven't been doing it. I wanted to change this habit because I was in it every single day at some point, just constantly focusing on all these numbers and figures and kind of obsessing with it. So I changed that the last year. It was just part of my goals and habit shifting. And what I don't have right now, because it's been so long in the process, is a lot of the data on the right in terms of my workouts, my recovery. I do have my sleep data, but I don't really have my daily weight, and that's fine because in Xform we're just trying to make lifestyle change and balance. So really each week is all I want to look at and just kind of see how I've come along using the pictures and comparing, and I have that through the videos I made. Now, you don't need this fancy spreadsheet to get started today. As a matter of fact, if you've been using FitnessPal to track your calories, you can just take a look at the weekly overview and kind of see how many you're having per week. And if you're comparing that with the weigh scale and pictures, you can tell if you're, losing weight or if you're in maintenance. Now, one thing that will happen is when I start the Xform series, I'm going to be in this a little bit more just to make sure my deficit is going how I plan it and being on track. Because when I'm trying to lose weight really fast, all these numbers are really important, and I can take it day to day just depending on what, how I'm feeling and what I need to get done. The biggest advantage to me is usually if I've gone Monday through Friday and then I have the weekend coming up, I kind of know how many calories I have left because I have a good idea of probably how much I'm going to burn. So I know how many I have left to eat in terms of setting up Saturday, Sunday, and based on the deficit I want to finish on. Now, this column is actually really interesting. It just pretty much tells me how my diet type was for the day. So in my world, there's high carb, high calorie, high fat, low calories, low fat, and really it just helps me see patterns and trends over time. And the most important one is balance, and that's BAL, and that just helps me know that, hey, I'm having a balanced diet, I'm staying consistent. Because what tends to happen when you start, say, changing macros and calories too much, you might not be consistent anymore because your body starts fighting back, and there'll be days where you eat more carbs or maybe days you eat higher fat. And especially when I start to get burned out, I'll notice there'll be a lot of what I call refeeds in here, or very high calorie days, and at that point is when I know I need to make some adjustments to keep it going long term. Now, steps is something I've added this year, and it's pretty much a function of calories out, which already gets kind of tracked and calculated, but I'm using this as a form of journaling, and also because I used to put in all my walks, but this way I can just kind of see it real quick rather than putting the different mileages I was doing per day. It just kind of helps me see my overall movement. Really, once I get a week of data, this is a great starting point, but for today, let's go ahead and start looking at an overall month. So I went ahead and finished all of the figures just so we can talk about how each one is important and why it's good to see the overall picture first, just because you can start making changes and adjustments if we see something that's kind of not lining up or throwing red flags. Like for in this example, there's my overall calorie difference for the week, which is only 750 calories, and that's an average estimate, and that probably resembles about a quarter pound of fat. So it means I'm going in the deficit. Now, what'll happen is in the next week where I get, say, closer to the 3,500 mark, that means I'm about a pound of fat, so I'm losing weight a little more aggressively. And rather than going through each of these columns and that left side, we're going to go over to the right side and we can see a bigger picture view. We can start to see the overall weekly calories in, calories out. We can see our deficit, and that's what's really going to help us know the direction we're going and how fast we're losing, say, body fat. Macros are really important, and I don't talk about them a lot just because they're usually involved with my performance and, say, my overall water retention. That's mostly what I track them for, but it's something that gets kind of off is when I start saying dropping fat too low, and this is something I'm really careful of just because it can mess with hormones and things like that. And like I've already said, it's one of the first ones I usually lower just because it's the most caloric. Now, one quick thing before we conclude is, the calories in, I've said about 4,000 a day, and you'll notice I don't see that other than the first week. Now, what it comes down to is my sauces, spices, vegetables, all those little extras I've talked about. In the past, I've found they can add up between 300 and 400 calories per day, and it's just something I'm gonna have every day. So I don't include that just because it's so burdensome. That's something that's not in here. So this is something that's easy for me. It's something I like to do, something that helps me be successful, and you don't have to go to these lengths, especially when it comes to lifestyle change and just, being better and being different and focusing on other things just than nutrition. And on the journaling, I obviously wasn't able to do that at the time because I didn't have this, so I just went ahead and pre-filled those with what I kind of remember, or just something where it's not a blank space. That's something that drives me crazy if there's no value, so just need to make sure it looks completed, it's all said and done, and that's pretty much it. That's what I have for my first month of data. So for those of you who actually sat through that, I appreciate it, and now you're miles ahead of everyone else, right? That's totally a joke, but honestly, really, this is all about balance and finding things that are going to work for you. And if number tracking is your thing, then I suggest giving it a shot in your own way. But if it's not your thing, that's no problem. Just find out, say, the right amount of calories, activity, and the different things that are going to help you be successful, and to make sure that you're documenting it or journaling it in some sort of way. And that's all I have for this one. So until the next one, take care. Peace out.